Okay, we're ready to get started. Today is October 13th, 2015, and this is the 2015 CFTA Business Partner Solutions Showcase. I'm Scott Friend, and I would like to thank all of our attendees for joining us today. Today's webinar is being recorded. Both the recording and the slides will be made available on the CFTA's website. The presentation is estimated to run 45 minutes, with the remaining time dedicated for questions and answers. Feel free to send any questions using the question dialog box either during the presentation to add it to the queue or save it to the end. I would like to extend a special thank you to today's presenters, Chuck Mies, Senior Manager of Business Development for Autodesk, TJ Meehan, Vice President of Professional Services for CAD Microsystems, and Jason Kunkel, Senior Applications Specialist for CAD Microsystems. Their presentation today is on tools for the building owner. Chuck, TJ, and Jason, thank you so much for being here today, and I'll turn it over to you, Chuck.
Thank you very much, Scott. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. So what we want to talk about is embracing the ecosystem. And I think it's an important way to look at all of this because you as owners don't work singularly. You work with an entire ecosystem. And what we want to do today is walk you through a fairly simple agenda that will help you understand that. We'll start by talking about what do we mean when we talk about an ecosystem. Then we'll walk you through some development efforts that Autodesk is undertaking with our partner CAD Microsystems to create tools very specifically for you, the building owner. And these are tools that we are distributing royalty-free that will allow you to start to enhance working with your ecosystem to make sure in the end of this process you actually get the data that you need to be successful as an owner. Then we'll wrap it all up with some summaries and some key takeaways. So let's think about this idea of an ecosystem and why this is important to you. James Moore said it in his book, The Death of Competition, that a business ecosystem is an economic community supported by a foundation of interacting organizations and individuals. So think about every project you do as a large university owner, or if you're an architect or engineer on this call working with large university owners, you understand that everybody works as part of an ecosystem. So it's only in embracing this whole ecosystem that we can start to really understand who these individual stakeholders are. We can start to look at some of the individual stakeholders that represent the ecosystem, such as your internal stakeholders in facilities operations, real estate planning, design, and construction. We can then start to expand our view of that ecosystem outside of yours to the typical stakeholders, such as your design firms, Arch, MEP, Structure, etc., your construction firms, the GCCM, specialty fabricators, and others that will be involved in this, and also then some of the other stakeholders that might be involved, suppliers, consultants, and others that we haven't talked about yet. So when you look at this picture, you start to understand that an ecosystem on a project tends to be fairly complex. Do they all work well? Well, not necessarily, and the reason why they don't necessarily work well is because many times these ecosystem members are siloed. They operate independently. And we also have traditional processes in place that typically address one stakeholder or team. For instance, maybe it's the process of the design team or the construction team, or et cetera. And then we compound all of this by using contract models such as design, bid, build, CM at risk, et cetera, that contractually separate stakeholders. And all of these start to magnify the challenges. Or in the case of our team, we tend to look at this as an opportunity. And the opportunity is to take to accommodate all of these existing process and facility and process issues and facilitate a process change by embracing the entire ecosystem. And how are we doing that? We're embracing the ecosystem by understanding that the core of this ecosystem, you the owners in the center, need different tools. And these tools need to not only support your workflows, but they may not necessarily be the tools the other members need. Ideally, these tools should do a few things. They should analyze. They should give you the ability to facilitate insight into the models and the data contained within the models. They should be tools to validate, to assist that ecosystem in understanding and meeting the deliverable requirements you have of them. And then they should be able to assist in the delivery of information downstream. If we can create tools that support this concept of analyze, validate, and deliver, we can ultimately facilitate and enable your existing workflows and facilitate this whole concept of process transformation. That is how we as Autodesk are looking at all of this. How we are dealing with this is by working with one of our partners, CAD Microsystems. And CAD Microsystems is doing development work for us. So as we look forward in the agenda, what I'd now like to do is to turn it over to Jason Kunkel. And Jason Kunkel is going to walk you through some of the specific tools that we've been developing with CAD Microsystems to embrace this ecosystem. So Jason, I'll turn it over to you.
Super, thanks Chuck. Hi everybody, as Chuck said, my name is Jason Kunkel. I'm a Senior Application Specialist over here at CAD Microsystems. We are really excited to be sharing these tools with you all today. We wanted to go over some of the highlights of each. We wanted to cover some of the pain points that we've been seeing, that you might have been seeing, and then how these utilities can help alleviate some of those issues that you're coming across. So the first tool we're going to be talking about is the Model Checker, and that has been designed to help facilitate and ease some of the BIM deliverable issues that we've been finding. And as we've been migrating from traditional CAD deliverables to BIM deliverables, we've seen some of these issues come across. I can't say they've been surprising, but they are absolutely real and valid issues that can make accepting BIM deliverables difficult. So one of the first issues we found is that there's a wide range of data quality that we see from firm to firm, from entity to entity. Many of the contractors, many of the designers started generating their own BIM standards in a bubble, and now that they need to share these outside of the bubble, there are many different levels of effort that they may put across, and again, many different levels of quality. Second issue is simply how much time it takes to check those BIM requirements. The traditional method is just for an individual to open up a model, maybe have an Excel spreadsheet on another monitor that ticks off items from the project execution plan, and then they need to go item by item to look through and see what matches up in the model and what doesn't. Thirdly, it's kind of tricky sometimes to convey the intent to the design team of what the model standards are. Frankly, the project execution plans can be long, and they are not necessarily the most exciting documents to read. They're absolutely critical, and they are a great way to organize and document those requirements, but for a Revit modeler sitting at his or her desk, those individuals can potentially have a hard time referencing that document over and over and trying to figure out the standards and how they may apply to what they're doing right there at the time. So what we have with the Autodesk Model Checker for Revit, its primary goal is to accurately and automatically review a Revit model for the BIM standards and then to report a pass or fail on those model checks. We have included several very extensive checks that you can grab with the tool, and there are also 30 individual smaller checks that are much easier to review and to pick apart and to understand what the potential of the overall tool is. So this is a screenshot of the Model Checker in action. This is an add-in right inside of Revit. And so when the user opens the Model Checker, you'll see each check has a name, and it has a description there as well. And those descriptions can be used to explain what the check is going to do. It can even be there to refer back to a specific section within the project execution plan, making refer back to it easier for more information and to keep people more on track. The checks can be flexible. We can mark some as required and some as optional. You'll see the O's and the R's there. And that allows the person doing the checks or the person doing the modeling to go and actually adjust the check at the time based on what the requirements are for that specific phase, or if a model itself needs different requirements based on its size or its needs. So because the tool is automated, the design teams can run the check whenever they want. You can even make a periodic check part of your execution plan with the reports reviewed at points in the design and the construction process that make sense for your team and for the project as well. The reports refer back to specific Revit elements within the model. You might be able to see down there in the results the ID number. So it makes tracking down a problem as easy as clicking that show button. right there in the report. Finally, with the model checker, you have the ability to run a check on more than one model at a time. You open up the check, you tell the model checker which models to look at, and you click the Go button. Now, the size of the model and the complexity of the checks is going to make the length of time per check vary, but it will be infinitely faster than having a human being open up each Revit file one at a time, open up a checklist, and go through a list of things to verify within that model. Once the check is done, the reports can be exported as an HTML file that you can easily send to anyone. It includes all the information within the HTML file that you're going to find in that same report within the Revit file itself. So the checks can be as complicated or as simple as you need them to be. The model checker is, an amazingly powerful tool that really speeds up and simplifies the BIM model checking process, and it also makes it far more consistent and reliable. Going hand in hand with the model checker, we have the model checker configurator. So this is not a Revit add-in like the model checker itself, but it outputs and generates files that are used exclusively by the model checker. So the purpose of the checker configurator is to generate your own model checks based on your own deliverable requirements. Much like the model checker itself, it can use those same sample 30 checks, and you can build on those, you can dissect them, tweak them until they fit your own purposes. And again, the checks can be as simple or as complicated as you need them to be. The collection of checks that you use can have one check or it can have 100. It all depends on the requirements you need. Based on some excellent feedback we've gotten over this being in beta, we are currently working on a wizard interface to try to simplify the process to create checks. If you look over that screenshot, checks can be a little tricky. They can be far simpler than that, but I wanted to give an example of one that might be a little difficult to parse through if you aren't a nerd or even partial nerd. So the beauty of the model checker configurator, once you have created your checks, you can export the collection of checks, you can collect those together and send them out to the entire design team, allowing them to use those checks that you've generated at any point during the design or construction process. So the third tool we have here is the Autodesk COBie extension for Revit. And just as a baseline, I wanted to do a quick refresher on COBie itself. That second bullet point gives you what the acronym is for, Construction Operations Building Information Exchange. To expand, COBie is a standard for data exchange between pieces of software, typically between the design software and the O&M or the FM application. So the software that it sends to does not typically open a Revit file natively, and nor does it necessarily want all of that Revit information. So COBie is intended as a common set of language rules that allows these unrelated pieces of software to share data between them. As COBie has become the norm for data exchange in the industry, we've seen some issues pop up. COBie is an extremely strict set of rules, which is fantastic because it allows all of these different tools to be able to talk to each other, but it also makes it difficult to make sure your data is COBie compliant, especially if that data is being coded manually. People who consume the COBie data are typically not Revit users, and on the flip side, the modelers using Revit are usually not very familiar with COBie, and so even though it's great for sharing data back and forth, you may not have a baseline for those users to communicate, and which can lead to problems and definitely confusing results. So the extension has been designed, the COBie extension has been designed to alleviate a lot of those problems that we've discovered. So as it's being generated, the data lives right inside of the Revit model. It maintains it for consistency and reliability, and so those Revit users who may not be too familiar with COBie can hop right in there, work inside of Revit, open up the Revit, the add-in interface that they may be familiar with, and it helps get that information populated in a more consistent and easier manner. So the parameter fields are right there in Revit, like I said. And in situations where there is not a necessary one-to-one relationship between Revit and COBie, the COBie extension has utilities to help walk the user through building that data. The best example we have here is that lower screen grab. It's called the Zone Manager, and it's pretty awesome, frankly. COBie requires rooms or spaces to be attached to zones, and Revit does not have anything comparable to a zone. It has rooms and it has spaces, but it wouldn't know what to do with the zone in there. So the COBie extension has been built with the Zone Manager to allow the Revit user to assign rooms to zones. Those zones are then stored within the Revit model so the user can go back and reassign or readjust later. Following along with that, the COBie files are mapped to the appropriate Revit parameters, and it helps speed up the data population. And when the COBie data is exported to the spreadsheet, you can pick and choose what information you have in your model that you want put in that spreadsheet and what you just want to skip right at that time. Much like the Model Checker configurator, we are working hard on version 2.0 of the COBie extension. One of the major requests and additions is a manual parameter mapping utility in case your Revit standards already accommodate COBie data, and so we're forcing the COBie extension parameters. The setup of the tool has been reorganized to more closely match the COBie worksheet output, and on top of that there is more flexibility in naming the exported COBie components to make them easier to understand or follow other requirements and standards that you might have. And I might as well mention now, these 2.0 versions that we're working on aren't something that we're expecting to happen years and years from now in 2017. These are items that are being working on right now, and we've got a lot of progress on them, and we're really excited to get them rolled out. The final tool we have is the Autodesk Classification Manager for Revit. So it seems like over the last 10 years there has been an explosion of different classification standards in the industry. I think the issue really is more that we are sharing data back and forth just opposed to sharing drawings back and forth, and so there needs to be a better way to help organize and categorize that data. There are several different prominent standards that have come across, each with its own purpose and time frame that need to be implemented. If you've looked at any of the standards, they are vast. So I cannot even begin imagining to memorize even a single one of these. And then trying to establish a relationship between the individual categories can be even trickier. To top it off, depending on your BIM standards, it's important to make sure elements have the right classifications assigned to them in a timely fashion. So the utility we have is the Classification Manager, and its primary purpose is to quickly add classification information to Revit elements from OmniClass, Uniformat, Master Format, and Uniclass, which is coming very, very soon. So the database that the tool uses comes pre-populated with all the information of these systems, with subcategories linked to the related subcategory and other standards where possible, and also filtered to a list of Revit categories. That by itself is a huge, huge time saver. You might see the custom tab there at the bottom of the screen grab. So the tool is flexible enough to allow you to create your own classification systems and use that in addition to the ones that come with the tool. So finally, the data is stored within the Revit model, which makes it accessible throughout the design and construction process. Plus the data is consistent. The parameters are consistent, the information for the database is consistent, so everyone using the Classification Manager has access to the same parameters and same database to populate their data. So like I said, those are the 4 utilities we've been working on. We're very, very excited to get them out there in the public, and that kind of wraps up what I got. So right now, Chuck, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
And if I can unmute myself, I can wrap up here. So let's talk about what does all of this mean for you, right? What are some of the key things we want you to take away? A lot of times when you think about the idea of BIM deliverables and creating data and managing that whole idea of moving things down, you can look a little bit like the person on the screen right here, right? It tends to get a little bit overwhelming. So what we want you to understand is a few things. First of all, we're really looking at the entire ecosystem around the owner to try to understand what are the opportunities for us to assist in that process, to help create a tighter opportunity for the entire ecosystem to work together and to drive more value for you. In order to do that, we're looking at developing some specific point solutions where process challenges can be identified. And there's one thing I want to emphasize in all of this. There's no cost to any of the tools that we've talked to you about today. There are typically two components to them. There is a shell that installs within the applications. Typically, we will support several versions of Revit. For instance, the Model Checker will support 13, 14, 15, and 16. And then there is the configuration. And the configuration is what you will either use the tool and save, or in the case of the Model Checker, use the configurator and develop the standard and save. And then in order for the entire ecosystem to be in sync, you basically need to point them to some place to download the tools, the shells, and then provide them with your configuration as an owner. And to that effect, we would like to announce that we have now created a microsite specific to these tools where we will have all of the information available. And that microsite is highly simple to navigate and easy to manage, and it's www.biminteroperabilitytools.com. And what you will find up there is you will find the installation files for all of these tools. You'll find samples and quick start guides that will help you get started in using these tools. You'll also find access to the entire help system for the tools, as well as other resources, such as Jason mentioned with the Model Checker. We've actually created and positioned up there sample model checks that will allow you to actually look at how another model check might be developed, and then think about how you can actually use that model check yourself. So with that in mind, I think we'd like to open up and see if there's any questions. But before we do, I have one final thought for you. One of my favorite people to quote from all times is Tom Edison, and he said one thing internally all the time, and he always said there's a better way to do it. There's a way to do it better. We just need to find it. And that's what we're trying to do with you when it comes to working with your ecosystem, is we're trying to create these tools that will help you ultimately find a better way to do things. So with that in mind, Scott, I don't know if we have any questions, or TJ, if there's any questions that we need to address with the audience.
We do have one question.
Okay. It says on the COBie zone feature, can you assign a part of a room to a zone, or is it just the whole room?
You only get the option to assign a whole room, a whole Revit room or a whole Revit space to the zone itself. TJ, maybe you can clarify and expand on that a little bit?
No, I mean, that's a limitation for Revit right now, is that, you know, you can't assign part of a room, a part of a space. You can easily separate those in Revit and create multiple rooms, multiple spaces. And the zone manager does allow you to assign a room or a space to more than one zone. So that might actually solve the issue.
Okay. Yeah, because COBie zones, TJ, that's a one-to-many relationship, correct?
That's correct. I don't even know how you would do that in COBie to assign part of space to a zone. You would still do the whole space in COBie, but COBie does allow you to assign a single space to more than one zone, which is why we built the zone manager in the COBie extension.
So Scott, are there any more questions?
There aren't any more questions as of right now. Unless anybody else has questions, just go ahead and put them in the questions window. And we'll give it another minute and see what we get.
Great.
So just out of curiosity, can you explain a little bit more on what that zone feature is used for?
Yeah, I can take that. So COBie does not require zones, but it is an optional element in a COBie spreadsheet. And the whole point is to group together the spaces so that you could say these are the admin spaces or these are the procurement spaces all grouped together. You know, sometimes you might have spaces that are designated for building maintenance. You know, maybe it's the mechanical rooms, the electrical rooms, the janitorial closets, things like that. So the zone manager allows us to accommodate that with a Revit model because Revit doesn't natively have zones built in besides just HVAC zones, which isn't really you know, meeting this purpose.
Okay. Well, so far I'm not seeing any other questions. So.
Okay. Well, Scott, you know, one of the things, you know, we've been partnering with the CFTA for a long time, and I said this at the conference, and I'll repeat it to those of you who are on the webcast. Don't underestimate the amount of influence that the CFTA has had on some of these development directions. The work you see here largely came out of the Corps of Engineers, but it was its application to higher education and all of the same similar issues that we were experiencing, Scott, and working with the CFTA that led to the creation and separation of these tools from that core workflow and actually getting us to the point of launching BIM interoperability-tools.com. So for all of you who on the phone who are members of the CFTA, again, we tremendously value your feedback. We listen to that feedback. It's helped us drive a lot of this initiative. And Scott, you know, the BIM interoperability tools website, as we mentioned, is now live, and you know, feel free to share that with other CFTA members.
We sure will. We can put a link out on the listserv for you.
Okay.
For any members who want to take a look at it.
Great. We appreciate that.
Okay.
So TJ or Jason, any final thoughts?
I don't have any.
I'm good. I appreciate the time.
Great. Scott, thank you so much.
All right. Well, thank you for your presentation today. And with that, I'd like to thank all of our attendees who joined us today. The next webinar in the CFTA Business Partner Solutions Showcase is scheduled for 1 p.m. on Tuesday, October 20th, 2015, and the presenter will be Glenn Seehausen, President and CEO of ACAD+. Glenn will be presenting on document management is virtually all about the metadata. So for any further information on future webinars in the series, visit CFTA website at www.cfta.org. And thank you everybody for attending today, and thank you to all our presenters. And have a good day.